What if peace was not the absence of storms, but the presence of a voice strong enough to calm them? What if stillness was not found in the silence of the sea, but in the nearness of the one who commands the waves? Welcome, beloved listener. You have come to Whispers of Faith, a quiet haven where Scripture becomes a resting place for weary hearts, where the words of Christ are not hurried, but linger, carrying you gently towards stillness, and where the troubles of the day may fade like shadows at dusk. Before we begin tonight's story, allow me to offer a simple invitation. If these whispers bring you comfort, if these stories help your soul to breathe more freely, please take a moment to support Whispers of Faith. You may like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Each gesture is a kindness that helps these gentle stories continue. Now, let your body begin to find rest. If you are lying down, let your head sink into the pillow. If you are seated, let your shoulders fall with each breath. Close your eyes if you wish. Feel the air move slowly in and out of your lungs, like waves rising and falling upon the shore. Inhale and release. Inhale and release. Let the weight of the day slip quietly from you. The thoughts that hurried through your mind may rest now. The burdens you carried may be laid aside for a while. You are safe here. You are loved here. You are carried gently in the presence of God. Tonight we turn to one of the most beloved stories of the Gospels. The night when Jesus and his disciples crossed the waters of Galilee. When a sudden storm rose and the waves threatened to swallow them. When fear filled the boat and hearts cried out for rescue. And when, with a word, the storm obeyed the voice of the Son of God. It is told in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And though each voice recalls it in their own way, the story is the same. A journey begun in calm. A storm rising with fury. Disciples trembling in fear. And the Master, asleep in the stern, awakening to speak peace into chaos. As we enter this story tonight, do not rush ahead to its ending, but walk with the disciples into the uncertainty. Feel the rocking of the boat, the sting of the spray upon your skin. Hear the creaking of wood, the thunder rolling above. Let your imagination bring you close to the waves, so that when the voice of Christ speaks, you too may hear its power. For this is not only a story of the sea long ago. It is a story of the soul tonight. It is a reminder that storms come to every heart, but peace comes to those who look to Him. And so, dear soul, breathe once more. In and out. In and out. The winds may rise, the waters may roar, but in this place of stillness, we will remember the one who calms the storm. Let us begin. The day had been long. Crowds had gathered upon the hillsides, pressing close to hear the words of the teacher. They brought with them their questions, their doubts, their wounds, their hopes. And Jesus, with patience that never wearied, spoke to them of the kingdom of God. He told parables of seeds scattered in soil, of lamps that shine in hidden places, of faith as small as a mustard seed growing into shelter for many. The sun had moved slowly across the sky, and as it dipped lower, the air grew softer. Evening stretched its quiet hand across the land. The voices of the crowd began to fade into murmurs. And Jesus, looking upon his disciples, spoke gently. "Let us go over to the other side." The Sea of Galilee lay before them. Not a sea by the measure of oceans, but a wide, shimmering lake encircled by hills. Its waters reflected the colors of twilight. Blue deepening into violet, violet softening into rose. The disciples, some of them seasoned fishermen, knew these waters well. They knew its sudden moods, its unexpected winds. Yet in the calm of evening, the thought of danger felt far away. So they stepped into the boat with him, their feet upon the wooden planks worn by many journeys, their hands upon the ropes and sails. They pushed away from shore, leaving behind the voices of the crowd, the press of need, the dust of the day. Ahead lay the quiet stretch of water, the silence of night, the promise of rest. The boat rocked gently as it moved out upon the lake. The creak of wood mingled with the lapping of water against its sides. The disciples spoke in low tones, their voices softened by the calm. Some reflected upon the parables they had heard. Others let silence fill the space between them. A stillness settled, broken only by the rhythm of oars dipping into the water. Jesus, weary from the day, found a place in the stern of the boat. A cushion was laid there, simple and worn. He rested his head upon it. And soon, his breathing slowed. His eyes closed. The Master of heaven and earth, the one through whom all things were made, lay asleep upon the wood of a fisherman's vessel. The night deepened. Stars began to pierce the sky above, their reflections trembling upon the water's surface. The hills grew dark in silhouette, and the disciples continued their quiet labor, guiding the boat toward the far shore. It seemed a perfect night. The kind of night where the air is cool, the water smooth, the horizon steady. The kind of night where peace feels effortless, and danger feels impossible. And yet, upon these waters, storms often came without warning, descending swiftly from the surrounding hills, stirring the lake into chaos. But for now, the disciples rode in calm. The teacher slept in peace, and the boat drifted forward beneath the canopy of stars. As you imagine this moment, let your own heart rest in its calm. Feel the quiet rhythm of the water, the slow rise and fall of the boat, the breath of Jesus, steady in sleep. Before the storm comes, there is this stillness. Before the winds rise, there is this peace. And it is in remembering this peace that we will soon see the greater miracle. For storms may come quickly, but peace begins here. The boat drifted further from shore. The stars glimmered faintly above. The night air carried the scent of water, cool and clean. All seemed calm. Until, without warning, the wind shifted. At first it was only a whisper, a sudden breath rushing down from the surrounding hills. But then it grew, pressing harder against the sail, lifting the waves into restless motion. The oars grew heavy in the disciples' hands, and the boat, once steady, began to lurch upon the darkening waters. The Sea of Galilee was known for this. Surrounded by ridges and valleys, the air could change in an instant. Winds descended like fierce messengers, stirring the lake into fury. What had been glass moments before became a rolling wilderness of water. And so it was this night. The disciples felt the shift immediately. They tightened ropes. They steadied the sail. Their voices rose in alarm. The wind is rising. Hold the line. Steady the boat. But the gusts only grew stronger. The waves rose higher. The stars disappeared behind clouds racing across the sky. Water sprayed over the sides, stinging their faces, soaking their garments. The boat creaked and groaned as it was lifted and dropped upon the restless sea. Again and again, waves struck its sides, splashing over the edges. The wood shuddered beneath their feet. Fear began to pulse through them. These men, some of them fishermen seasoned in storms, now found themselves overwhelmed. The darkness pressed close. The water rose higher. And in their hearts, dread whispered of sinking, of being swallowed by the deep. "Row harder," one shouted. "Bail the water," cried another. Hands scrambled with buckets. Oars splashed frantically. But the storm raged without mercy. The lake became a churning wilderness. Its surface wild, its waves unyielding. In the stern, however, Jesus still slept, his head upon the cushion, his breathing unbroken by the chaos around him. The spray did not wake him. The rocking of the boat did not stir him. The voice of the storm did not pierce his rest. How strange it must have seemed. To the disciples, fear screamed of danger. To their eyes, death seemed near. Yet the one they followed lay at peace, untouched by panic, asleep while the storm howled. And in this moment, the contrast deepened the disciples' fear. They looked upon him, and they could not understand. How could he rest when the world was breaking apart? How could he sleep when their lives were at risk? Did he not see? Did he not care? The storm raged louder. Lightning flickered across the sky. Thunder rolled heavy through the night. The boat pitched and swayed, and hearts trembled with each crashing wave. Here, upon the dark waters, we are reminded of our own storms. Those sudden winds that rise without warning in our lives. the moments when peace seems certain, and then chaos strikes. Illness, grief, loss, fear, uncertainty. And suddenly, the calm waters we trusted are no longer steady. And like the disciples, we cry out in fear. We scramble to hold the pieces together. We row harder, bail faster, work longer, strive desperately. Yet the storm rages on. And we wonder, where is God in this? Oi! The disciples had not yet called to him. But the storm was pressing them closer to that cry. Closer to the moment when fear would turn into desperate prayer. Closer to the moment when his voice would rise above the winds. But for now, they struggled. The storm roaring around them. Their hearts heavy with dread. And the Master still sleeping. The storm raged without mercy. The waves rose like dark mountains, crashing against the boat. Thunder rolled like the roar of beasts across the heavens. Lightning tore jagged paths of white fire through the night sky. And the disciples, their hands raw from ropes and oars, fought against the fury of the sea. Buckets filled with water only for more to pour in. Muscles ached, lungs heaved, voices shouted above the howl of the wind. Yet the boat sank lower with every surge. Fear pressed upon them like a weight heavier than the waters. Death seemed near. And in the stern of the boat, Jesus still slept, his head resting upon the cushion, his body swaying gently with the rocking vessel, his breath steady, untroubled. At last, the disciples could bear it no longer. Fear overcame them. Desperation drove them. They stumbled toward him, water splashing at their ankles, voices breaking with panic. They shook him, their hands trembling, their eyes wide with terror. "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Oi! The cry pierced the storm. Words torn from hearts pressed to their limits. They did not ask politely. They did not reason carefully. Their voices cracked with urgency, desperation, raw fear. It was the cry of men who had reached the end of themselves. Imagine their faces, soaked with rain, streaked with salt and spray. Their garments clinging heavy against their skin. Their hair whipped wild by the wind. Their voices hoarse from shouting against the storm. And now, their eyes fixed upon him, pleading, "Do you not see us? Do you not care? We are perishing." Oi! How often do our own prayers sound like this? Pressed not from calm reflection, but from the depths of panic. From nights when sleep will not come, when fear roars louder than peace. We too cry out, "Lord, don't you see? Don't you hear? Don't you care?" Oi! And in our desperation, we wonder if heaven is silent. If God is asleep to our need. The disciples had seen his miracles before. They had watched him heal the sick, cast out demons, restore the broken. They had heard his words of authority, words that opened the scriptures and pierced their souls. And yet, in this storm, fear drowned their faith. For faith is not proven in calm. It is tested in chaos. But still, their cry was prayer. However fragile, however desperate, it was prayer. They did not abandon him. They did not leap into the waters in despair. They turned to him. They shook him awake. They placed their lives in his hands, though their words were tangled with fear. And that is the mercy of God, that even our panicked cries are heard. Even our fearful prayers are welcomed. Even our desperate shouts, "Don't you care?" are received with compassion. The disciples' cry filled the boat, mingled with the roar of the storm. Thunder above, waves below, fear within. But it was enough. Enough to awaken the one whose peace is greater than their panic. Slowly, Jesus stirred. His eyes opened, calm amidst chaos. His body rose from rest, steady amidst the rocking of the vessel. The storm raged on, but something had shifted. For the voice that would soon speak had awakened. The disciples stood around him, dripping with rain, gasping with fear, waiting. Their cries still echoing in the night air. Their hearts clinging to him as their last hope. And in that fragile moment, with the storm still unbroken, they looked to him. Their teacher, their Lord, their only salvation. The storm raged in full fury. The sea rose in heaving swells, lifting the boat high one moment and plunging it low the next. The disciples clung to ropes, to planks, to one another. Their voices hoarse, their arms weary, their hope fraying with each crashing wave. Fear filled their lungs as much as the spray of water. And in the midst of their despair, Jesus stirred. The teacher rose slowly from his rest, his body steady upon the rocking boat, his face calm, untouched by the chaos around him. The storm roared on, but he was unmoved. His eyes opened upon the darkness, and where the disciples saw only danger, he saw something else. Not a threat beyond his power, but an opportunity for his glory. He stood, and the wood beneath his feet groaned as the vessel pitched. Lightning lit the sky, revealing his figure outlined against the fury. Thunder rolled, yet his presence seemed to silence even the roar. The disciples, dripping with rain, trembling with fear, drew back slightly. Their eyes fixed on him, their breath caught between panic and hope. And then he spoke. His words were not many. Not shouted against the wind, not strained above the thunder, but spoken with the authority of the one who made the seas. Peace. Be still. Oi. 3 words. But in them, eternity echoed. The voice that once spoke light into darkness. The voice that separated sea from dry land. The voice that called stars into being. Now commanded the storm with effortless authority. And at once, creation obeyed. The wind fell silent. The clouds broke apart and fled across the sky. The waves stilled, their foaming crests collapsing into glass. The boat ceased its lurching, settling steady upon the calm surface. One heartbeat the storm had raged, and in the next, there was perfect stillness. The disciples gasped. Their eyes widened. Their mouths parted in awe. For they had seen miracles before, but this was different. He had not healed a single body. He had not driven out a demon. He had not touched the sick or multiplied bread. He had spoken to the very elements, and they had obeyed. Their fear of the storm now shifted into a deeper awe. Fear of the one who commanded it. "Who is this," they whispered, "that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Oi! Silence fell upon the lake. Silence deeper than the storm had been loud. The water lay still, smooth as polished stone. The stars returned, their reflections quivering softly upon the glassy surface. The air was clear, cool, and steady. Peace lay over them like a blanket. But Jesus, turning to his disciples, asked them a question. Not in anger, but in gentle rebuke. "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Oi! The words pierced them more deeply than the storm had. For the storm had threatened their lives, but his words now revealed the storm within their hearts. Fear had ruled them, though the Lord of heaven and earth had been with them all along. Faith had not failed because he was absent. Faith had faltered because they had forgotten his presence. And so his question lingers, echoing across the centuries. Why are you so afraid? Oi! How many times do we, too, tremble in our storms, forgetting that he is near, letting fear drown the memory of his promises, letting panic overtake the peace he has given. The miracle of the calming of the storm is more than proof of power. It is revelation of presence. He was with them in the boat. He is with us still. His power is not only to end the storm, but to remind us that no storm can undo his presence. Consider the silence that followed. The disciples still dripping wet, their garments heavy, their hair clinging to their faces. The water pooling on the floor of the boat. Their muscles still aching from their frantic labor. And yet, the sea was still. The winds were gone. Their bodies trembled with exhaustion, but their spirits trembled now with awe. They looked upon him, and the question burned in their hearts. Who is this? Oi! And though they had not yet grasped the fullness of his divinity, they knew one thing. They had never seen such authority, never known such peace. Perhaps you know storms of your own. Storms of the heart, storms of the mind, storms of circumstance. Perhaps the winds of anxiety roar through your thoughts. Perhaps the waves of grief or loss batter against your soul. Perhaps fear shouts louder than hope. And yet, in the stillness of prayer, you hear his voice. Not shouting, not straining, but speaking with calm authority. Peace. Be still. Oi. And when he speaks, peace is not the absence of storm alone. Peace is the presence of Christ himself. The disciples would never forget that night upon the lake. The storm they thought would end them became the moment that deepened their faith. The sea they feared became the place where they learned the authority of their Lord. And the boat they thought would sink became the altar where peace was revealed. So too with us. The storms we dread may yet become the places where his peace is most clearly known. The waves that threaten to overwhelm us may yet become the mirrors of his glory. The winds that frighten us may yet become the breath that drives us closer to his heart. Let your soul rest in that truth tonight. The one who calmed the storm then still speaks now. His voice carries across centuries, across waters, across the storms of your life. And when he speaks, peace always follows. The storm had fallen silent. The waves lay still. The stars returned to their watch above the quiet sea. And in the boat, drenched and weary, the disciples stood in awe of the one who had spoken peace into chaos. But after commanding the winds and waves, Jesus turned to them. His voice was not raised in anger. His words were not filled with scorn. They came softly, yet firmly. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Oi. In those questions, a deeper truth was revealed. The storm outside had ceased, but there was still a storm within their hearts. A storm of doubt. A storm of fear. A storm of forgetting who was with them. Yet notice how patient he was. He did not abandon them for their fear. He did not cast them aside for their weakness. He did not demand perfection from their faith before he acted. He saved them first. He calmed the storm first. And then he invited them to see what their fear had hidden. This is the patience of Christ. He meets us where we are. He does not wait until our faith is flawless. He does not hold back his mercy until our trust is unshakable. He comes to us even when our prayers are desperate cries. Even when our voices tremble with doubt. Even when our hearts are tangled in fear. The disciples' faith had faltered. But their cry had still reached him. They had turned to him, even if in desperation. And he answered. This is how he deals with us as well. Our prayers are not always steady. Our faith is not always strong. Sometimes we cry out not with confidence, but with panic. Not with boldness, but with trembling. And still, he hears. Still, he comes near. Still, he speaks peace into our chaos. Think of how many times in your own life you have felt storms rise. Perhaps storms of circumstance, illness, loss, uncertainty. Perhaps storms of the heart, anxiety, fear, doubt, loneliness. Perhaps storms of the soul, questions, weariness, longing. In those moments, your prayers may not have been eloquent. They may have been as simple as, "Lord, help me. I am drowning. Don't you see?" Oi. And yet, even in such prayers, Christ is patient. He does not scold the trembling child. He does not ignore the weak cry. He comes near. He hears. He answers. The miracle upon the sea is not only about his power over creation. It is also about his patience with his people. For he who calmed the storm also calms the fearful heart. He who rebuked the waves also gently rebuked their unbelief. Not to shame them, but to invite them deeper. Deeper into trust. Deeper into knowing who he is. This is how faith grows. Not in perfection from the beginning, but in small steps. In faltering trust that learns to lean more each time. In cries answered with mercy until we remember that he is always near. The disciples would face many more storms. Storms of persecution, storms of doubt, storms of trials as they carried his name into the world. But this night would remain with them. A memory that whispered, even when we were afraid. Even when we thought we would perish. He was with us. And he is Lord of the storm. Oi. And so it is for you. Your storms are not evidence of his absence. Your fear is not proof of his rejection. Your weakness is not beyond his patience. He remains in the boat with you. He is not distant, even when the winds rise. Listen to his question again, spoken gently into your soul tonight. Why are you so afraid? Oi. It is not condemnation. It is invitation. An invitation to remember who is with you. An invitation to see that fear need not rule you. An invitation to let faith grow, even if only as a mustard seed. And listen too to his second question. Do you still have no faith? Oi. Not to shame you, but to awaken you. To remind you that faith is not the absence of fear, but the turning of fear toward him. Faith is not always loud. Sometimes it is as small as reaching out, as trembling as a desperate cry, as fragile as a whispered prayer in the night. Yet even so, he honors it. He meets it. He grows it. Let your heart rest in his patience tonight. You are not expected to carry perfect faith. You are only called to turn toward him. To cry out, even in fear. To trust that he is with you, even when your eyes see only storm. For the one who calmed the sea does not abandon the fearful. He teaches them. He walks with them. He grows them. And through his patience, their faith becomes strong enough to calm storms of their own hearts and to speak peace into the lives of others. As the night deepens around you, let your soul breathe in this truth. Your faith need not be perfect. Your prayers need not be polished. Your heart need only turn toward him. And when it does, his patience will meet you. His mercy will cover you. His presence will calm you. So rest now. Let the storm outside fade. Let the storm within grow still. And let His patience become your peace. The disciples sat in the boat, their garments heavy with water, their arms trembling from exhaustion. The storm had ended so suddenly that silence itself felt like a miracle. The waves, moments before towering high and threatening to consume them, now lay flat and smooth, like glass stretched across the surface of the lake. The air, which had been thick with spray and roaring wind, now hung calm and still. And at the center of it all stood Jesus. His words, still echoing in their ears, hung in the air like a holy fragrance. Peace. Be still. Oi. Words that creation itself obeyed. The disciples looked at one another, their eyes wide with awe. Some whispered, barely above a breath. Others simply stared at Him, unable to find words. And then the question rose among them. Trembling, reverent, filled with holy fear. Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey Him? Oi! It was no small question. For these men were sons of Israel. They had been raised on the Psalms and the prophets. They knew the scriptures well enough to recognize what they had just seen. They knew the words of Psalm 89. O Lord God of hosts, who is mighty as you are, O Lord? You rule the raging of the sea. When its waves rise, you still them. Oi! They knew the words of Psalm 107. They cried to the Lord in their trouble, and He brought them out from their distress. He made the storm be still, and the waves of the sea were hushed. Oi! They knew that in the stories of their people, it was always God alone who commanded the seas. It was the Creator who hovered over the waters in the beginning. It was the Almighty who divided the Red Sea and led their fathers through on dry ground. It was the Lord who rebuked the raging floods and tamed the forces of chaos. And now, before their very eyes, a man, their teacher, their companion, had spoken as God speaks, and creation had bowed to His voice. This was more than a miracle of safety. It was revelation, a glimpse of His true identity breaking through the veil. The one asleep in the stern was no ordinary teacher, no mere prophet, no wonder-worker like those the nations whispered about. He was Lord of creation. Every wind that whistled through the hills, every wave that rose upon the sea, every bolt of lightning that cracked across the heavens, had been made through Him. And now, at His command, they obeyed their Maker. The disciples trembled, not only because the storm had terrified them, but because they now realized who was in the boat with them. The Holy One of Israel. The Word through whom all things were made. The very presence of God in flesh. And here lies the heart of the miracle. It is not only that He calmed their storm. It is that He revealed Himself as the one who holds all storms in His hand. Think of this, dear soul. The same voice that calmed the waters of Galilee speaks over your life. The same word that hushed the storm speaks peace into your heart tonight. The same Creator who tamed the sea with a phrase is the one who carries you through every trial. This is why faith is not simply trust in His kindness. It is trust in His authority. Faith that rests not only in what He can do, but in who He is. Lord of creation, Maker of the seas, Master of the winds. The disciples would remember this night forever. They would tell it again and again, not only as the story of their rescue, but as the revelation of His divinity. The night when they glimpsed the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. And still today, His voice speaks. Across oceans, across centuries, across the storms of human lives. His command is not weakened. His authority not diminished. His presence not withdrawn. He remains Lord of creation. So let your heart rest in this tonight. The one who holds the seas holds you. The one who commands the winds commands your days. The one who spoke stillness over the waters speaks stillness over your soul. Breathe this truth in. Let it sink deeper than fear, deeper than doubt. You are carried not by chance, not by the strength of your own hands, but by the Lord of creation Himself. The storm has ended. The sea is calm. And in the silence that follows, or lingers, or that leads to worship, or that teaches the soul to rest in the one whose power is endless and whose love is near. The boat lay quiet upon the calm waters. The disciples, still trembling, sat in silence, their garments heavy with water, their hands blistered from ropes, their hearts pounding not from the storm now, but from or at the one who had calmed it. They had seen His power. They had heard His voice command the sea. They had watched the waves fall at His word like servants bowing before their master. And yet, within that display of authority, there was something more. Something tender, something personal. For the storm had not been calmed to prove a point. It had not been stilled to display His greatness alone. It had been silenced because He cared for them. Because He heard their cry. Because He would not leave them perishing in the waters. This is the wonder of Christ. That His power is never divorced from His compassion. That His authority is always joined with His love. Think of it. The wind and sea obey Him, yes. But so too does His heart incline toward the cry of His disciples. The Creator of heaven and earth, who holds galaxies in His hand, also bends to hear the frail prayer of men soaked and afraid in a wooden boat. The one who spoke stars into being also listened to their trembling question. Don't you care if we drown? Oi! And His answer was not only in rebuke of the sea. It was in reassurance of His love. For what good would it have been if He had proven His power but left their hearts untouched? What meaning would the miracle carry if the waves stilled but their souls remained in fear? No. He spoke peace not only to creation but to them. He calmed not only the storm outside but the storm within. This is why His question matters so deeply. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Oi. For faith is not only trust in His strength. It is trust in His heart. Trust that He sees, that He knows, that He cares. The disciples would come to understand this more fully in time. They would see Him weep at the tomb of Lazarus. They would watch Him feed the hungry upon the hillsides. They would witness Him kneel to wash their feet, one by one. They would stand at the foot of His cross and realize that His care was so deep it led Him to give His life. And in that cross, they would see the same truth revealed on the lake. That His authority is always clothed in love. That His power is always expressed in compassion. So it is for you, dear listener. The God who commands the seas also bends low to care for you. The Lord whose voice silences storms also whispers peace into your fears. The one who rules creation does not rule from distance, but from nearness. He is not only mighty, He is merciful. Not only sovereign, but compassionate. Perhaps you have known storms that seemed too fierce. Perhaps you have wondered, like the disciples, does He not see? Does He not care? Oi. And yet, in time, you saw that He did. Perhaps not always in the way you expected. Perhaps not always with sudden stillness. But always with love. Always with presence. Always with care that did not abandon you. For the greatest miracle is not only that He calms the seas, but that He is with us in the boat at all. That He chooses to share our frailty, to walk our roads, to rest in our weariness, to join us in our fears, and to speak peace when we think all is lost. Let this truth be your rest tonight. You are not forgotten in your storms. You are not overlooked in your fear. The one who holds creation together holds you as well. His care is as certain as His authority. His compassion as steady as His power. The disciples looked upon Him that night and trembled. Not only because the sea obeyed Him, but because they realized they were known by Him, loved by Him, carried by Him. And so are you. Sleep now in that assurance. Let it settle over you like the calm that spread across the waters. Let it still your own heart as the waves were stilled upon the lake. Let it remind you that the storms may roar, but love is greater. And love Himself is with you. The storm was gone. The sea lay calm. The disciples sat in silence, their hearts still trembling from what they had witnessed. Their garments clung to their skin, heavy with water. Their hands bore the raw marks of ropes and oars. Their voices, hoarse from shouting against the roar of the wind, now fell quiet. Only the gentle lap of water against the boat remained. But though the storm outside had ended, something deeper remained within them. A stirring, a holy unease. For they had not only survived danger, they had encountered revelation. They had seen their teacher command creation itself. And they had heard His gentle rebuke, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" In this, the storm had become more than a trial. It had become a classroom. For storms do this. They test faith, yes. But they also teach faith. They reveal what lies hidden. They expose what words alone cannot. When the disciples first stepped into the boat that evening, their faith was calm because the sea was calm. They trusted because the horizon looked steady. They rode without fear because no clouds darkened the sky. But when the winds rose, when the waves towered, when death seemed near, their faith faltered. Fear shouted louder than trust. Panic drowned the memory of his promises. And yet, in that very faltering, they were taught. They learned that faith is not proved in calm, but in chaos. Not measured by comfort, but by crisis. Not tested when the skies are clear, but when darkness descends and the waters rise. They learned that their faith had been shallow, tied to circumstance. But that true faith must be rooted deeper. Not in what they saw, but in who was with them. They learned that storms are not signs of God's absence, but opportunities for His presence to be revealed. This is why storms remain part of every believer's journey. Not to crush, but to teach. Not to destroy, but to refine. Not to overwhelm, but to deepen trust. Think of your own storms. Those nights when fear pressed hard against your chest. Those days when troubles rose like waves threatening to pull you under. Those seasons when you cried out, "Lord, don't you care?" And yet, somehow, you found that He was there. Perhaps not in the way you expected. Perhaps not in the timing you hoped. But there, nonetheless. In those storms, you learn something about yourself. Your weakness, your limits, your need. But you also learn something about Him. His strength, His patience, His nearness. Storms become classrooms because they strip away illusions. They remind us that we are not self-sufficient. They reveal how quickly our strength fails, how fragile our control is. And in that stripping away, they make space for trust, for surrender, for faith that leans not on self, but on Christ. The disciples would face storms again. Not only of wind and water, but of persecution, rejection, imprisonment, uncertainty. And when those storms came, the memory of this night would return to them. They would remember the boat rocking, the waves crashing, the voice of Christ rising above it all. And they would know, He is Lord, even here. He is faithful, even now. And so it is for you. Your storms are not wasted. They are teachers. They are places where faith is tested and stretched. They are moments where you discover that peace is not found in calmer waters, but in the presence of Christ within the boat. Let your heart rest in this tonight. The storm you face may feel fierce, but even now, it may be the classroom of your faith. Even now, it may be shaping you, deepening your trust, teaching you to rest not in what you see, but in who He is. Close your eyes. Imagine the sea calm again. The stars shining above. The disciples quiet, their hearts changed. And remember that storms do not last forever. But the faith they shape endures into eternity. The storm was gone. The boat rested quietly upon the waters. The stars, hidden before, now shone once again in their appointed places. The air was cool, and the lake was still. Yet in the silence that followed, another question lingered in the disciples' hearts. Why had he waited? Why had he not calmed the storm at its beginning? Why had he allowed the winds to rise, the waves to tower, the boat to nearly sink, before he spoke? Why had he remained asleep when fear raged so fiercely? This question lingers for us as well. For how often do we find ourselves asking the same? Why did the illness come before healing? Why did the grief cut so deeply before comfort was felt? Why did the path grow so dark before the light appeared? Why did he not prevent the storm? Yet in this night upon the Sea of Galilee, we are given an answer. Not in words, but in the rhythm of his presence. For Christ does not promise that storms will never come. He does not promise skies forever clear or waters forever calm. But he does promise this. He will be with us in the storm. He will not abandon the boat. He will not fail to hear the cry. He will not let the waves prevail. His timing is not our timing. His ways are not our ways. And yet, his timing is perfect. If he had calmed the storm the moment it began, the disciples would never have felt their fear. They would never have discovered the frailty of their faith. They would never have cried out from the depths of their need. And they would never have seen his authority revealed in such power. By allowing the storm to rise, he allowed their faith to be tested. By waiting, he gave them the chance to turn to him. By delaying, he prepared them for a revelation they would never forget. This is the rhythm of his mercy. Not prevention, but presence. Not avoidance, but authority revealed in the midst. Think of the stories throughout Scripture. Israel at the edge of the Red Sea, Pharaoh's army pressing close behind. God did not prevent the pursuit, but he parted the waters at the appointed time. Daniel in the lion's den. God did not prevent his captivity, but he shut the mouths of the lions in the darkness of the pit. The three friends in the fiery furnace. God did not prevent the flames, but he walked with them in the fire, and not even the smell of smoke clung to their garments. And upon this lake, God did not prevent the storm, but he revealed his power in its midst. So too in your life. The storm may rise, the night may grow dark, the fear may press hard. But his timing is perfect. He may wait until the moment seems desperate, until your strength is gone, until your cry is lifted. And then he comes. Not late, not careless, not unaware, but at the exact moment when his presence will bring the deepest peace. This is not easy for us. We want prevention. We want calm seas and gentle skies. We want storms stopped before they even begin. But His wisdom is greater. His love is deeper. His plan is higher. He knows that sometimes the storm must rise in order for faith to rise with it. The disciples learned that night what they could not have learned otherwise: that His power is not diminished by delay, that His care is not absent in silence, that His timing, though mysterious, is always perfect. As you rest tonight, let this truth soothe your heart. The delays of God are not denials. The silences of heaven are not abandonment. The waiting is not emptiness. It is preparation. It is invitation. It is the space where faith grows deeper, roots reach further, trust becomes real. Breathe this truth slowly into your spirit. He may not prevent the storm, but He will meet you in it. He may wait until the waves roar high, but He will not fail to speak when the time is right. And when He does, peace will come, deeper than you imagined, stronger than you hoped. So rest now. The one who calmed the sea still governs time. His delays are not neglect. They are mercy written in ways we may not yet understand. And one day, you will look back and see: He was never late. He was never absent. He was always there. The lake was calm once more. The storm had passed, leaving only silence behind. The boat, which had strained against wind and wave, now drifted gently. Its planks still wet, its ropes still heavy, its passengers still weary. But though the sea was stilled, the disciples' hearts were still wrestling with what had happened. Why had their fear overtaken them so quickly? Why had their trust faltered when He was with them all along? Why had they thought themselves abandoned when the Lord of creation sat in their very boat? Storms have a way of revealing the truth. Not only the truth of who Christ is, but the truth of who we are. For in calm waters, we often believe ourselves strong. We row with steady arms, confident in our skill. We guide the vessel as though it rests in our control. We imagine that we can carry ourselves across life's lake by our own strength. But when storms rise, when the winds howl and the waters flood the deck, when fear grips the chest and the horizon disappears, then our weakness is exposed. Our limits are revealed. Our illusions of control are stripped away. This is not cruelty. This is mercy. For only when we see our weakness do we turn fully to His strength. Only when we feel our helplessness do we learn dependence. Only when we realize we cannot calm the storm ourselves do we discover the one who can. The disciples, many of them fishermen, had trusted their skill. They had weathered storms before. They had pulled nets in rough waters, guided boats through sudden squalls. But this storm broke their confidence. It drove them to the end of themselves. And at that end, they found Him. This is the way of faith. to be brought to the end of self, so that we may discover the sufficiency of Christ. How often do we resist this? We want to be strong. We want to manage our storms. We want to row harder, bail faster, solve quicker. But the lesson of the lake is that our strength will always run dry. And His strength never will. Dependence is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is truth. It is life. For what does Scripture say? Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. Dependence is not failure. It is faith. It is the quiet surrender that says, I cannot, but He can. I am not able, but He is able. I am not in control, but He is Lord. The disciples would remember this night, not only as the night of the storm, but as the night they learned dependence. The night they discovered that their strength was not enough. And that was not their ruin. It was their salvation. So too with you. The storms of your life may strip away the illusion of self-sufficiency. They may humble you, revealing that your arms cannot row hard enough, your hands cannot bail fast enough, your wisdom cannot steer far enough. And though that humbling may ache, it is grace. For it drives you to Christ. Rest tonight in this truth. You are not meant to carry life alone. You are not asked to calm your own seas. You are not expected to master every storm. You are invited to depend. Invited to trust. Invited to lean upon Him who never falters. Let your breath remind you of this rhythm. Inhale. You receive. Exhale. You release. Inhale. You depend. Exhale. You surrender. Each breath a prayer. Each breath a confession that you are carried not by self, but by Him. Dependence is freedom. For when you rest in His strength, fear loses its grip. When you lean upon His presence, storms lose their power. When you surrender your striving, peace takes its place. The disciples, though still trembling, began to learn this that night. They had thought they would perish. But instead they discovered that in their weakness, He was strong. In their panic, He was present. In their desperation, He was Lord. So let your heart take courage in this tonight. You are not left to row alone. You are not cast upon the sea without help. The Lord of heaven and earth sits in your boat. His power is your refuge. His presence is your peace. His love is your strength. Depend on Him. Trust Him. Rest in Him. And let the storms of life become the classrooms of faith, where self fades and Christ is all. The disciples had seen the storm end with a word. They had felt the winds fall, the waves bow, the sea return to stillness. And yet, long before the lake was calm, Jesus Himself had already been at peace. He had slept in the stern. his body resting though the storm roared, his breath steady though the boat pitched, his face calm though the winds shrieked. This was not ignorance, not indifference, not carelessness. It was peace, the peace of heaven dwelling in the heart of the Son of God. This is what the disciples did not yet see. That peace does not depend on the storm ceasing. Peace is not the silence of the waters, but the presence of Christ Himself. For the sea can be calm and yet the heart still troubled, and the sea can rage and yet the heart be still. Peace is not in the circumstance. Peace is in the Savior. Consider how often we think of peace as the absence of problems. If only the bills were paid. If only the illness healed. If only the conflict ended. If only the future were secure. Then peace would come. But Scripture teaches a greater truth. Peace is not found when the storm subsides. It is found when Christ is near. He said to His disciples in another moment, "My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." The world's peace is fragile, fleeting, dependent on calm seas and steady skies. But His peace is deeper, steady even in chaos, unbroken even in storms. That night on the lake, He revealed both kinds. He showed that He could still the storm, but He also showed that He Himself was at rest even before it ended. And so the invitation for us is not only to pray for calmer waters, but to learn the peace that dwells in Him regardless of the waves. Think of this in your own life. How often do storms linger longer than you wish? Trials stretch on, prayers seem unanswered, burdens remain heavy. And yet, in the midst of them, have you not sometimes felt a strange calm? A quietness that makes no sense, yet steadies you. A peace that should not be there, and yet it is. That is His gift. That is His presence. That is the deeper peace of Christ. This peace is not taught in ease. It is learned in storms. It is learned when the boat rocks, when fear rises, when control slips away. It is in those moments that His Spirit whispers into the heart, "Be still. I am here. Do not be afraid." The disciples did not yet know how to carry such peace, but they were being taught. Every storm, every trial, every cry answered by His presence was shaping them into men who would one day face prisons and persecutions, rejection and hardship, and yet walk in peace. So too are you being taught. Each storm in your life is not only a trial, it is a lesson. Not only a challenge, but a classroom where you learn that His peace is not fragile, not fleeting, not dependent on calm, but steadfast, enduring, eternal. Let this truth wash over you tonight. You may long for your storm to end, and that prayer is not wrong. But even before it ends, peace is possible. Peace is near. Peace is Christ Himself within you. Close your eyes now. Imagine the waves still rolling, but your heart steady. The wind still howling, but your breath calm. The darkness still pressing, but your soul at rest. For this is what it means to rest in Him. It is not denial of the storm. It is trust in the one greater than the storm. And so tonight, as you drift into rest, let this prayer settle into your heart. Lord, let your peace be mine, even when the storm remains. Let me rest in you, even before the sea grows calm. Let me sleep as you slept in the stern, knowing that I am safe in your care. For His peace is not tomorrow's promise. It is tonight's gift. The night upon the Sea of Galilee ended in silence. The disciples sat still, their garments dripping, their hands trembling, their eyes fixed on the one who had spoken to the storm. They had seen His peace, and they had felt it ripple outward. What began in Him became the calm of the waters. What dwelled within His heart spread to creation itself. This is the way of His peace. It does not stop with us. It flows outward. It touches the world around us. For peace is not only a gift to be received. It is also a calling to be carried. The disciples, in time, would understand this. They would remember the storm and the stillness. They would recall His calm as He slept, His authority as He spoke, His gentleness as He questioned. And they would carry that peace into a world filled with storms of its own. When they faced persecution, they would remember. When they stood before rulers and judges, they would remember. When prisons held them and chains bound them, they would remember. And in remembering, they would not tremble as before. They would stand in peace. And that peace would become a testimony to others. This is what Christ meant when He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." For those who have received His peace are called to extend it. Those who have felt His calm in their storms are called to bring calm into the storms of others. Think of this in your own life. There are those around you who live in constant waves of fear, anxiety, conflict, unrest. Perhaps they are family members weighed down by worry. Perhaps they are friends lost in confusion. Perhaps they are strangers carrying silent battles. And in their storms, your peace may become their refuge. Not because you have all the answers. Not because you can calm their seas. But because the peace of Christ within you can steady the space around you. A gentle word offered in love. A calm presence in the midst of conflict. A listening ear that quiets another's racing heart. These become echoes of His voice. Peace. Be still. You may not still the seas of Galilee, but you may still the storm in a friend's soul by your patience. You may not hush the winds of creation, but you may hush the winds of fear in a child's heart by your tenderness. You may not command the waves of nature, but you may calm the waves of division by choosing forgiveness. For His peace is not meant to stop at you. It is meant to pass through you, to flow outward like ripples upon water, reaching farther than you can see. This is why the Apostle Paul would later write, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you are called to peace." Peace ruling within, and peace flowing outward. A gift received, and a gift shared. Imagine if each disciple, having seen the storm stilled, had kept that peace only for himself. Imagine if they had hidden it away, hoarded it in silence. The world would still tremble in fear. But they did not. They carried it into homes, into synagogues, into marketplaces, into prisons. And everywhere they went, the storms of others were touched by Christ's peace through them. So too are you called to carry His peace beyond your own soul, to bring calm where there is chaos, to offer mercy where there is strife, to shine gentleness where there is harshness, to become a vessel through which His stillness reaches the lives of others. This does not mean you will never face storms yourself, but it means that even in storms, your peace can become a beacon. Others will look and wonder, how can you be calm? How can you rest when the waves are high? And your answer will not point to yourself, but to Him. Because Christ is with me. Because He has spoken peace into my heart. Because His presence is greater than the storm. And in that testimony, others may find peace too. Let this thought rest within you tonight. You are not only a receiver of peace. You are a bearer of peace. The same way the calm of Christ spread from His heart to the sea, so too His peace may flow from your life into the lives of others. As you breathe slowly, picture yourself as a lamp in the night. The light you carry is not your own. It is His. And as it glows, the darkness around you recedes. So it is with peace. The calm you carry is not yours alone. It is His peace within you. And as it flows outward, the storms of others may quiet. Rest in this calling tonight. For tomorrow, the world will need peacemakers. And you, filled with His presence, may be one of them. The sea was still. The storm had ended. The disciples, drenched and trembling, sat in awe of the one who had spoken to the winds and waves. And though their bodies longed for rest, their souls burned with a question deeper than any storm. Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey Him? In that question lies the heart of eternity. For the calm that Jesus gave them that night was not meant only for that moment. Not meant only to deliver them from one storm. It was a glimpse, a foretaste, a whisper of the eternal calm He brings to all creation. The peace of Christ is not like the peace of the world. The peace of the world is fragile. It lasts only until the next storm. It depends on circumstances that shift like sand. But the peace of Christ is eternal, steady as the throne of God, enduring as His love. When He spoke, "Peace, be still," the waters obeyed. But more than that, eternity broke into time. Heaven touched earth in the silence that followed. Creation itself bowed to the voice of its Maker. And in that moment, the disciples glimpsed what one day will be true for all things. For Scripture tells us of a day to come, when storms will cease forever, when tears will be wiped away, when death will be no more, when all creation will rest in the eternal peace of God's kingdom. The prophet Isaiah spoke of it. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Oi! John the Apostle saw it in his vision. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. Oi! The peace the disciples felt on the lake that night was but a glimpse of this. A small taste of the eternal calm that Christ will bring when he makes all things new. And this is our hope, that even when storms rise again in this life, even when waters grow rough, when skies darken, when fears return, we look forward to the day when storms will be no more, when peace will not be interrupted, when his presence will fill all in all. Every storm in this life becomes a reminder of what is yet to come. Every cry for peace becomes a longing for the eternal calm of his kingdom. Every glimpse of his power, every whisper of his presence, every moment when fear is stilled by faith. These are foretaste of forever. And this hope is not uncertain. It is sure. For the one who calmed the storm on Galilee is the same who will calm the storms of all creation. The one who stilled the waters with his word will one day still the turmoil of all history. The one who whispered peace into a boat of frightened men will one day whisper peace over the whole earth. So tonight, as you rest, let this eternal hope settle in your heart. The storms you face now are real, but they are not final. The peace you taste now may be brief, but it is not fleeting. It points you forward. It draws you onward. It anchors you in the promise that eternal calm awaits. Close your eyes and picture that day. The seas no longer restless. The skies no longer dark. The earth no longer trembling. All is calm. All is still. All is peace. The voice of Christ reigning forever. His presence filling every corner of creation. His people resting in love that never ends. This is your destiny. This is your hope. This is the eternal calm promised in him. So sleep now with that promise near. Let the peace you long for become the lullaby of your heart. For one day, the storms will be no more, and you will rest forever in the calm of his eternal kingdom. The storm was gone. The lake stretched calm beneath the stars. The boat drifted gently, its passengers silent. The air that had howled now carried only stillness. And yet, though the storm had ended, a holy trembling remained in the disciples' hearts. Moments earlier, Their fear had been of death. Fear of waves swallowing them, of winds tearing them apart, of sinking into darkness. But now their fear had changed. Their fear was no longer of nature. It was of the one who commanded it. "Who is this," they whispered, "that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Oi! This was not terror as before. It was awe, reverence, worship. For they realized they were not in the presence of an ordinary man, not even of a prophet alone. They were in the presence of the Lord Himself, the one who had authority over creation, the one whose word carried power older than time, the one whose voice the seas recognized, because it was the same voice that had first called them into being. Their fear turned into worship. Their trembling became reverence. Their panic gave way to awe. This is often the path of storms. At first, they terrify us. They reveal our weakness, expose our limits, break our illusions of control. But when Christ meets us in them, when His peace enters, when His authority is revealed, the storm becomes a place of worship. We bow not to the storm, but to the one who calmed it. The disciples did not leave that night unchanged. The memory of His voice, His presence, His authority would echo within them. And from fear grew faith. From panic grew praise. Think of this in your own life. How many times have storms left you humbled? Yet when you looked back, you saw His hand. You realized He had carried you, sustained you, spoken peace at the right time. And in that realization, your fear became worship. You bowed not to the storm that had frightened you, but to the Savior who had delivered you. This is how worship is often born. Not in moments of ease, but in moments of awe. Not when life is simple, but when Christ reveals Himself in the midst of chaos. Not when we are in control, but when He shows us He alone is Lord. Storms have the power to strip us, to empty us of self. And in that emptiness, we finally see Him as He is. We finally worship not with shallow words, but with hearts undone by His greatness. The disciples, soaked and weary, likely said little that night. But within their silence was reverence. Within their awe was worship. Worship is not always loud, not always song or shout. Sometimes it is silence, a trembling stillness before the Lord. Sometimes it is a whisper. Who is this? Oi! Sometimes it is a heart bowed low, undone by His presence. And this worship changes us. It roots faith deeper. It strengthens trust. It teaches us that storms are not only trials, but invitations. Invitations to see His glory. Invitations to know His power. Invitations to worship more truly than before. Perhaps your storms, too, may lead you here. Perhaps fear may turn into awe. Perhaps trembling may give way to worship. Perhaps the place of your deepest dread may become the altar of your deepest praise. For when Christ reveals himself as Lord of the storm, worship is the only response. Let this thought soothe you tonight. The storm you feared may yet lead you into worship. The chaos you dreaded may yet reveal His glory. The fear that grips your heart may yet become reverence. Close your eyes. Let or settle in your soul. Let worship rise within you. For the one who calmed the storm is worthy of all praise. And every storm, when surrendered to Him, becomes a pathway to deeper adoration. The sea was calm. The boat drifted steady upon its waters. The disciples sat in silence, hearts pounding still from awe. Their eyes traced the face of Jesus, the one whose voice had silenced creation. And though the storm was over, the lesson had only begun. For this night was not only for their rescue. It was preparation. The disciples did not yet know all that lay ahead. They did not yet grasp the weight of the mission that would soon rest upon their shoulders. They did not yet see the prisons, the persecutions, the hardships, the trials. They did not yet imagine the journeys across lands and seas, carrying His gospel into a world often hostile, often resistant, often dangerous. But He knew. And so this storm was not wasted. Every wave that rocked the boat, every gust that howled across the waters, every drop of fear that filled their hearts, was part of their training, part of their preparation, part of the shaping of their faith. For storms have a way of preparing us for greater storms. And victories of faith in one season become anchors in the next. When Peter would later stand before hostile crowds, when Paul and Silas would sing in prison cells, when John would be exiled upon Patmos, writing visions of eternity, they would remember nights like this. They would remember the storm that nearly sank them, and the voice that stilled it. They would remember the lesson, that no wave, no wind, no darkness, no danger could prevail against the presence of Christ. This is the mercy of God. He prepares His people, step by step, storm by storm. He does not send them unready into the battles ahead. He shapes them in small storms, that they may stand in greater ones. He trains their hearts in moments of fear, that they may stand in courage when the mission is heavy. And so it is with you. The storms you face are not without purpose. The trials you endure are not empty. Each one, though painful, is preparation. Each one, though difficult, is shaping. Each one, though unwanted, is a classroom of faith building you for what lies ahead. Perhaps tonight you can look back and see this already. A hardship once endured prepared you for compassion now. A struggle once carried gave you wisdom for today. A fear once overcome gave you courage for tomorrow. Storms do not simply pass. They shape us. The disciples would never again look at storms the same. They would still feel fear, yes. But woven into their memory was the sound of His voice, the sight of His authority, the stillness of the sea obeying Him. And that memory would be their anchor. For one day, they would face storms without him physically in the boat. Storms of persecution, storms of rejection, storms of loneliness. Yet the memory of this night would whisper to them, "He is still Lord of the storm. He is still with you. His peace is still yours." And that is true for you as well. The memory of his faithfulness in one storm becomes strength in the next. The peace you found once will echo into tomorrow's trial. The voice that calmed you before will calm you again. This is how faith is prepared. Not in ease, but in endurance. Not in calm, but in chaos met with his presence. Not in comfort, but in storms that reveal his power. So rest tonight with this truth. The storm you face now is not wasted. The trial before you is not empty. It is shaping you, preparing you, equipping you for days ahead. And though you do not yet see what lies on the horizon, you can trust that the one who calmed the storm then is already preparing you for tomorrow. The disciples' journey was only beginning. And so is yours. But just as he prepared them, he will prepare you. Let this comfort steady your heart. You are not left unready. You are being shaped, storm by storm, into one who can stand firm in his peace. The disciples had seen much that night. They had seen the fury of wind and water. They had felt fear press upon their hearts like a weight too heavy to bear. They had cried out in desperation. And they had seen Jesus rise, speak, and calm creation with a word. But beneath the memory of the storm, another truth was taking root. The realization that his presence in the boat had been greater than the storm outside it. For though the winds howled, he had not left them. Though the waves roared, he had been near. Though their hearts trembled, his rest had been unbroken. His very presence was enough, even before he spoke. This is the deep lesson of the lake. That the presence of Christ is greater than the power of the storm. The disciples thought their safety rested on calm waters. They thought peace would come only when the winds ceased. But the greater truth was this. Peace had been with them all along, because he was with them all along. This is the same truth that steadies us today. For storms rise in every life. Some roar through circumstances, sudden loss, unexpected illness, shattered plans. Some rise within, in the form of anxiety, doubt, loneliness, fear. Others come from the world around us, conflict, division, uncertainty. And in these storms, we too may think peace is found only when the waves subside. But peace is not the absence of storm. Peace is the presence of Christ. Think of the disciples' mistake that night. They measured their danger by the size of the waves. They measured their hope by the strength of their arms. They measured their future by the darkness of the sky. And in doing so, they forgot the truest measure of all. The presence of the Son of God, resting in their very boat. How often do we do the same? We let circumstances dictate our peace. We let fear rule our thoughts. We let the storm seem larger than the Savior beside us. And yet, He is here, closer than breath, nearer than fear, greater than the waves. The disciples would one day learn this truth deeply. Peter, imprisoned and chained, would sleep between guards, resting in the same peace he once saw in Jesus asleep in the stern. Paul and Silas would sing hymns at midnight in a Philippian jail, their voices rising above the storm of their suffering. John would write of visions from exile, unbroken by the isolation of Patmos. They had learned the truth: Christ's presence is greater than the storm. And so must we. Your storm may still rage. The wind may still howl. The water may still splash against the sides of your heart. But He is with you. The Master of the sea sits in your boat. His presence is your anchor. His nearness your security. His love your refuge. Breathe this truth slowly tonight. Inhale. He is here. Oi. Exhale. I will not fear. Oi. Inhale. He is greater. Oi. Exhale. I am safe in Him. Oi. The storm outside may not cease immediately, but the storm within can grow calm. For His presence steadies the soul. Let your heart settle in this assurance. You are not left adrift. You are not abandoned upon restless waters. You are not forgotten in the storm. He is with you, always with you. And if His presence was enough to calm the disciples' storm, it is enough to calm yours as well. So rest now, dear soul. The winds may rise, but they cannot drive Him away. The waves may crash, but they cannot overcome His care. The night may press heavy, but it cannot shadow His light. For the Lord of the storm is also Lord of your life. And His presence in your boat is greater than anything outside it. The storm was over. The water lay calm beneath the night sky. The disciples sat quietly in the boat, their breaths slowly steadying after the terror that had gripped them. Their bodies were weary, but their hearts were filled with awe. And though they did not yet understand all that had happened, one truth had already begun to take root. They would never forget this night. Every detail would remain etched into their memories. The sudden howl of the wind, the sting of spray upon their faces, the frantic scramble to bail water as the boat filled, the desperation in their voices as they cried out, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Oi! And above all, the calm authority of His words. Peace. Be still. Oi! Followed by the shocking silence of a stilled sea. This memory would live with them, shaping them for the rest of their days. For storms do not simply pass and vanish. They leave behind lessons. They leave behind reminders. They leave behind testimonies that strengthen faith for the future. When the disciples would face trials again, this night would come back to them. When they walked into unknown towns to preach the gospel. When they faced opposition from rulers and religious leaders. when prisons held them and chains bound their hands, when they felt alone, uncertain, and afraid. The memory of the storm would whisper to them, "He is Lord of the wind and waves. He is greater than fear. He is faithful in the storm." Oi! Memory itself can be an anchor. What Christ has done before is proof of what he will do again. What he has spoken once, he will speak again. What he has calmed once, he can calm again. This is why Scripture so often calls God's people to remember. Remember the deeds of the Lord. Remember how he led you out of Egypt. Remember how he fed you in the wilderness. Remember his wonders of old. Oi! For in remembering, fear loses its hold. In remembering, faith rises again. The disciples would learn this, step by step. They would remember not only this storm, but the feeding of the 5,000, the raising of Jairus' daughter, the walking on water, the empty tomb, each memory building upon the other, each one reminding them that the Lord who was faithful then is faithful still. And so it is with you. Your life holds storms of its own. Nights you thought would break you. Seasons where fear rose like waves. Moments when you cried out desperately for God to intervene. And yet, here you are. You endured. You were carried. You were not left alone. The storm did not last forever. And that memory is now your anchor. Perhaps you can recall a time when you felt lost, but he gave direction. When you felt abandoned, but his presence drew near. When you feared you would not have enough, but he provided. These are not just stories of the past. They are reminders for today. They are anchors for tomorrow. The storm upon Galilee was not only for that night. It was for every night that followed. It was for every storm the disciples would face again. And your storms are the same. They are not wasted. They are not empty. They become memories that will steady you in the next trial. They become testimonies that will give courage when fear returns. They become whispers of peace reminding you of his faithfulness. As you rest tonight, let your mind wander back. Not only to fears, but to the faithfulness that met you in them. Let your memory become your peace. Let your past storms remind you that Christ has been with you all along. And when the future brings storms again, as it surely will, you will not face them with empty hands. You will carry the memory of his voice, the proof of his presence, the testimony of his faithfulness. And that memory will be enough to steady your heart. Close your eyes now. Imagine the disciples in their later years, walking roads far from Galilee. When fear rose, they would remember the lake. When doubt pressed, they would remember his voice. When loneliness whispered, they would remember his presence in the boat. And their memory became their strength. So it is with you. Remember his peace. Remember his power. Remember his presence. and let those memories carry you into tomorrow's storms with courage. The disciples sat in silence, their hearts still heavy with awe, their eyes drawn again and again to the one who had calmed the storm. And though the waters were now still, a deeper truth remained, echoing in their souls. This night was more than survival. It was a sign. For the calming of the storm was not only about that single moment upon Galilee. It was a glimpse of something greater. A whisper of the final promise. A foretaste of the day when all storms will cease forever. The prophets had spoken of such a day. Isaiah had seen it in his vision of peace. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you. Ezekiel spoke of the covenant of peace that God would make with his people. And John, on the island of Patmos, would one day see the vision fulfilled. There will be no more sea. No more chaos, no more fear, no more restless waters. Only calm, only light, only the peace of God's eternal kingdom. The storm that terrified the disciples was but one storm among many. But it pointed forward to the truth that Christ has authority not only over winds and waves, but over every power of chaos, over every shadow of death, over every force of fear. When he spoke peace, be still, creation obeyed. And one day, he will speak again, not only to the waters of Galilee, but to all creation. And every storm will cease. Every tear will be wiped away. Every sorrow will end. This is our hope. That the storms we endure now are not the end of the story. That the chaos of this world will not have the final word. That the fear which haunts us will not last forever. For Christ has promised a greater calm, a peace that will never be broken. The disciples did not yet see this fullness, but they had seen the glimpse. They had tasted the truth. They had witnessed with their own eyes the power of his word. And that vision would sustain them, even when storms rose again in their lives. So it is with you. Your storms may feel endless, but they are not eternal. Your fears may roar loudly, but they will one day be silenced. Your trials may weigh heavy, but they will not endure forever. For there is a day when his voice will speak over all creation, and his word will be final. Peace forever. Let this promise comfort you tonight. You may face winds tomorrow, but you carry the hope of eternal calm. You may feel waves crash against you, but you rest in the assurance of everlasting peace. You may walk through storms in this life, but your destination is a shore where storms are no more. Close your eyes now. Picture that eternal morning. The sea glass-like, the skies radiant, the earth renewed. No shadows, no storms, no sorrow. Only his light. Only his peace. Only his love filling all things. This is the end toward which every storm points. Not despair, but deliverance. Not destruction, but renewal. Not fear, but eternal peace. And tonight, as you breathe slowly, let that promise cradle you. Your storms are real, but they are temporary. His peace is eternal, and His promise is sure. The night upon the Sea of Galilee has ended. The storm has passed. The waters are calm. The disciples sit in quiet awe, their eyes resting upon the One who has revealed Himself as Lord of the storm. Their fear has become reverence. Their panic has turned to peace. And so too your night draws to a close. The story has been told, but its truth remains with you. That Christ is not distant from your storms. He is with you in the boat. That His peace is not fragile, dependent upon calm skies, but eternal, steady, unshaken. That His voice is still speaking. Peace. Be still. Oi. Let these truths settle deep into your soul tonight. You are not alone. The storm cannot drown you. The night cannot overwhelm you. The winds cannot undo you. For the One who spoke to Galilee speaks also to your heart. Rest now in His presence. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breath deepen. Let your mind grow quiet. As the disciples rested when the waters grew still, so you too may rest now. The boat is steady. The stars are shining. The Master is near. Close your eyes. Imagine His peace covering you like a blanket. Imagine His hand guiding you safely across the waters. Imagine His voice, calm and clear, whispering into the depths of your being. Do not be afraid. I am with you. This is the lullaby of faith. Not that storms will never come, but that you will never face them alone. Not that waters will never rise, but that they will never prevail. Not that fear will never whisper, but that it will never rule. The storm has been calmed. The sea is still. The journey continues. But for now, there is rest. Good night, dear soul. Rest in His peace. Sleep in His presence. Dream in His love. For the One who calmed the storm watches over you still, and His whisper remains, now and forever. Peace. Be still. Oi.